Well, thanks very much for the kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us here today. It's really a pleasure to be here with an old friend and colleague and cybersecurity superstar, Jaya, who has this amazing ability to really see where we're heading and connect the dots between these emerging disruptive ideas that most people can't get their heads around and kind of the real world and what we do about it and fixing real world problems. So that breadth of talent and insight is really rare, so I'm really delighted to be able to have this discussion with her and then be able to get some deeper insights here. So just to set the context here, there's this quantum world that keeps growing. When is it coming? Well, it's here. It's just going to continue to evolve and grow, just like computing's been here for decades, right? It didn't just show up out of the blue all at once. And so the quantum world's already here. It's already impacting us, but it's certainly becoming a bigger force and with more and more technologies being operationalized. And the question is when it meets our existing, way of doing things, our existing world, the existing economy, is it going to be a disruptive collision, or is there going to be a convergence where we build a better world together? And some people try to predict that, though I think it's really up to us to create it and decide, are we going to proactively mitigate the collision, the destructive aspects, and proactively leverage the positive aspects. And just, some cybersecurity context for all of us is, back in the 80s, there was cryptography back then. It was used in several, niches, one might say, the military, intelligence, some niche finance applications, and it was done largely out of band. Somebody would exchange cryptographic key material manually, one way or the other. And then through open telecommunications of some sort, you would send information and maintain its confidentiality and integrity and so on using cryptography. But there was this heavy part of exchanging keys out of band and managing them. And there was a really serendipitous convergence of mathematicians in the late 70s had discovered a mathematical way of doing this key exchange thing in band. There's still some out-of-band dependency, but it's a much easier thing to deploy, these secure certificates and so on. So it suddenly enabled us to take this very heavy, manual, difficult-to-scale thing and do it easily in band. And it was timed with, the development of the internet starting to take off and finance and others using it. So it really was a fundamental enabler of the last 30 years of economic growth. The fact that we could actually protect the internet and connected devices and so on. So there's the things at the top of this diagram that we all, I think, rely on every day. Our whole economy depends on it. But if you go deep, deep down, there's a scarily small set of mathematical algorithms that protect all of it, right? So I think nowadays people are very worried about, vendor, that's the term now? Supply chain risk, but also concentration risk. There's like uber concentration here because all the suppliers are using the same cryptographic algorithms, such as the one based on the fact that it's easy to multiply two large numbers. But if I give you a large number and say what were the factors, that's actually really hard to do. And we leverage literally that problem to help us secure things on the internet. So there's a really super critical, concentrated vulnerability here. And of course, as we always do, we say, that's nice, and we ignore it until it's a real problem. In parallel, in what seems like a completely parallel track, over 100 years ago, we invented quantum mechanics. We moved from observing it to harnessing it to deploying it in early stage technologies. And we're all super excited in Europe, US, Asia, to sort of continue to harness and operationalize these capabilities and solve a lot of really important problems for humanity and create economic wealth. But the reason we know this is, we're in the exponential track, it's following us, but we're also exponential in that there's this exponential computing power intrinsic in quantum systems. It's not good at everything, but it's good at some things. And one of the first things we realized where we really viscerally saw this exponential power is it can break those codes that are supposed to take longer than the lifetime of the universe, but that we could break them in hours, say, maybe even minutes with further optimizations. So that's a problem that we need to mitigate if we really want to reap the fruits of large-scale quantum computers, right? And probably the best simple to understand summary of how this would impact the global economy and the internet and connected devices was an Anna Stewart CNN piece from a few months ago where she takes a sledgehammer and starts trashing a computer. But maybe I'll stop there and maybe ask Jaya to kind of correct and augment anything I just said and maybe elaborate on like how bad is this really going to be? Is this just like more noise? Because there's all sorts of different vulnerabilities, all sorts of different attacks. Is this going to make it 10% worse? In other words, I'm going to ignore this and go back to all my other problems?
Yeah. So let's start by saying, I hate the notion that everything is a crisis. If everything is defined as a crisis, then nothing is. So we should actually see this as part of the business as usual. My threat model is not the same as your threat model. There is no singular notion of everyone should do this. That is nonsense. Anyone who's telling you that is trying to sell you something. So really what we should think about is, what is it you have to protect? And from whom? There are different types of attackers. Some of them are targeting your data, your services, your intellectual property, or your customers. Others are just opportunistic. They frankly don't care who they hack. And when we take a look at those types of victims, that's where we see ransomware affecting hospitals, universities, public institutions. So we should really think about the quantum threat in this lens. And we should think about, okay, let's look and examine what that threat model looks like, which type of risk analysis you need to conduct, and how can we make quantum part of business as usual for not just cybersecurity, just how we do business today. It should just be one of those things. Okay, I've got to do that too, because as the world changes and as we innovate, these are the consequences of some of that innovation.
So can you elaborate on how this would be different? Like, because I'm worried about the systemic risk, right? Like, we're used to one bank getting hacked one day and another bank getting hacked another day and one telco getting hacked, But like you've lived through like Heartbleed, for example.
For example,
like, is this like better? Like, how much scarier or less scary is this than Heartbleed?
Heartbleed sounds like a really bad breakup. That was not what it was. Heartbleed, that was supposed to be a joke, sorry, So Heartbleed was actually the name of a cybersecurity attack that was attacking SSH, which is what we use all over the internet for secure communications, and it was an ability to reveal certain information. And the problem with Heartbleed when it emerged is that a lot of the typical vendors we take for granted who have this particularly vulnerable library within their ecosystem, they didn't know. So when this attack came out, and you went, and I won't name names, but if you went to the door of, pick a vendor, your most popular favorite ones, and you said, are you affected by this vulnerability? They couldn't tell you. So this was one of those cryptographic problems early on, because it became clear, not only do we have no clue what cryptography we rely on day to day, neither do the people that sell it to us. That becomes a problem because that supply chain risk is then baked into their overall proposal. Yeah, so this isn't a crisis now, but if we don't get ahead of it, then it will be, because we won't be able to remediate this in time, and it's systemic. It's not just isolated here and there vulnerabilities. And I think what you see in our society today is we're very good at prioritizing things that are both important and at that very specific moment urgent. We make euros or dollars free for those problems, but the things that we know that are coming down the chain that are important but not yet urgent today, those we do not prioritize. And we say, oh, we'll do it tomorrow, until they become both important and urgent, which is a really stupid philosophy. Sorry.
So we have to get ahead of this before the attacks become real and cyber criminals start productizing these attacks. And so, we have to, there's a certain migration time. Some information assets have years of confidentiality. So we have to look at the threat timeline with respect to this migration time and so on. And we've seen over the last 30 years now, quantum computing, there's roughly 5 stages to become cryptographically relevant and then beyond. And 20 years ago, it was like, definitely not for the next 20 years. But now we're in a very different era, right? We've done amazing Nobel Prize-winning research. We're now entering the penultimate stage. So we're really knocking on the door of this could happen in 5 to 10 years, basically, with material risk, right? I don't think you want to go to your board of directors or regulators or your customers and say, don't worry, there's only a 25% chance that all hell, that this will systemically crash and we don't have a plan to fix it. So we really do need, and 5 to 10 years is pretty aggressive to fix it, right? Like the US government, the Bundesamt für Sicherheit und der Informationstechnik here in Germany, they're saying get this done ASAP in 5 to 10 years. And I don't think they're saying that because, oh, don't worry about it for 5 to 10 years. I think they're saying that's as fast as one can realistically go. So this is really, again, not a crisis, but we really do have to move assertively to mitigate these risks. The National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US has produced some standards that we can now start deploying that are being deployed in products, right? And there's other actors who are just proactively taking leadership in the financial sector and other sectors and helping define the best practices for effecting this unprecedented migration. Because people don't act, I think, for 2 reasons. The impetus to act, the threat isn't real, the regulators aren't asking them, the customers aren't asking, and secondly, they don't know what to do. And I think both of those have changed in the last 12 months, right? We have standards, and people are telling you to do it. So we're starting to see uptake by massive global vendors. They're taking they're not done, by the way. So this is important first steps that they're taking, and there's still a lot of work to be done, and a lot of people that need to follow this. But I personally feel like I got into this as a code breaker, right? So I kind of know there's people doing what I was doing a long time ago who are trying to attack those foundations. And if they succeed, they basically have the keys to the global economy, right? To our national security, our sovereignty. So that hasn't happened yet, but that's really luck, because all the code breaking that we've seen in the modern era either was on a code that wasn't widely used, or we got an advance warning, right? Like the quantum threat. We knew about it in 1994, but the threat couldn't be implemented because you needed this quantum computer thing first. And we're kind of seeing it unfold slowly. But some of the shortlisted NIST candidate algorithms, they were broken on a laptop on a weekend, like no advance warning. So you could get 20 years advance warning, you could get 20 seconds advance warning. We're absolutely not ready for a true zero-day attack. Luck is not a strategy when the entire global economy depends on it. So we really have to architect for resilience, right? You would think enterprise risk management can answer the 3 questions of, well, we know what happens if the algorithm's broken, don't worry, it won't be catastrophic, and we have a plan to get things up and running quickly. But we don't, right? And the other thing is, so a lot of people, when we go to them, like, you really need to get ahead of this, like, don't panic, but get moving, they're like, they'll talk to their guy, right, their technical person, and they'll say, oh, we're doing what NIST tells us to do, right? But NIST produces these building block algorithms, and it has produced really, I think, great, new algorithms. But, we have friends at NIST. They don't do enterprise risk management for all the global enterprises. They give you good, robust building blocks to protect your system. And smart people like you then use those building blocks, right? So what do you have to say about this notion of I'm just going to do what NIST says, and who cares about those other methods? Because what we've done in parallel is we've taken the old school 1980s methods that didn't scale so well and found ways to make them scale better. And there's this new quantum band of communication that enables other cryptography. And sometimes you'll say, oh, I don't need those fancy things. I'm just going to do what NIST says. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to say here.
Look, we're going to make excuses for as long as we possibly can. We're going to do the usual approach to try to find the minimum viable amount of commitment we need to deliver in order to do security. So the regulatory stuff that's there, whether you're a telecom regulator or a banking regulator, those things, and that's why you'll see these industries will move first. But that is at a minimum. The compliance requirements, the regulatory requirements are the floor, not the ceiling of what good looks like. So genuinely, even though we have NIST standards, and that was a very long excuse for a very long time, I'm not going to do anything until NIST says so. Now the other excuse is well, NIST has this stuff, but I'll wait until my vendors do it. You shouldn't wait, because we know that this will break things, and we know that those algorithms will also break, to Michele's point about, a psych being broken on the laptop. So the only request I have to you is please figure out what these algorithms are and start trying to use them in your companies, in your scenarios. Because when it breaks, what we want to get to is a place of cryptographic agility, that we can take out an old algorithm or something that doesn't work and replace it with something that does.
Yeah, this idea that compliance, just checking the box, compliance and security are decreasingly aligned. You can be compliant and not secure, and the secure stuff isn't yet integrated into the compliance framework. So we need to take responsibility for our own security and fix these frameworks so they're more practical and effective. Maybe, do you want to quickly say something about all the hype that's out there? Because the hype creates noise and then it confuses people and it further slows down action. So I don't know what you want to
there's a lot of
about
hype
that.
and hyperbole. You might have seen Jensen Huang from NVIDIA say, the quantum thread is so far down the line with quantum computers, we're so not there. I want to urge you to take a very good look at the hype and the hyperbole and to try to find the common middle ground and the sensible things that is said by the majority rather than a soundbite given to you by anyone. So look for what scientists and people who are working in the field are actually saying about the current state of quantum computing, and then we will all be better off.
Yeah, and a great unbiased resource for that is that Quantum Threat Timeline report I put up earlier. I co-authored it, so that was a bit of a joke. But it surveys dozens of the world's thought leaders here and gives a spectrum of opinions. So you can really see the wide spectrum and make your own decisions there. Just in closing, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, here about Europe's role in here, and can we do more than just be the great inventors and be the R&D, center for other parts of the US and China and others? Can we not be better at commercializing and reaping the economic prosperity and having a bigger, a proportionate piece of the pie at the end? Like, what can we do better in Europe to really be bigger winners here?
So in Europe, you might know we have the Quantum Flagship. It's a €1 billion project that was started by the Commission in order to foster and further leadership in the quantum domain. We only have 3 flagships. One of the things I should do is we should foster that type of collaboration scientifically between institutions and public and private cooperation in this field. We shouldn't stymie it with export control. There are now considerations around export restriction of quantum computers beyond 34 qubits. This type of practice would be a death knell for member states who want to keep cooperating with each other. So things that restrict this type of trade within Europe, we should really look to how we foster collaboration and lessen these types of restrictions.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because if we work backwards from the objective of economic prosperity, better security, then we can better understand, are these regulations really helping us achieve it or not? Or are there some unintended consequences really holding us back? It's fully within our control, I think, to more proactively, let's not just do innovation theater. I think Europe can win by the limited resources we have left. If we focus it on actual innovation-driven prosperity, we can actually get somewhere. If we keep blowing it on innovation theater, it's not going to take us to a better place.
And maybe one reasonable moonshot is to ask that Europe focus on defense, not offense, when it comes to what do we do with quantum technologies. If we can do something, akin to what China did with their quantum network, where they have misuse in the satellite space and a terrestrial network, our goal is to connect everything quantum with each other on a quantum network. We should be able to do this in order to protect and defend Europe's interests, and that would be a great goal.
Well, on that note, I just want to thank you so much, Jay. It's always, we've gone through this several times, and it's always a different panel discussion we have, but it's always a really interesting one, so thanks so much. And many thanks to Steffi for so many years of support and friendship here and giving us an opportunity to engage with a wonderful community. Jay and I will be here the rest of the day as well, so happy to connect with anyone, and of course, feel free to reach out to us online. So thanks again to the audience as well.
Thank you.